Welcome and thanks for joining today's webinar. Today we're going to dive in to how Premera Blue Cross transformed their facilities, space, and real estate to optimize their workplace. This event today is going to be presented by PK and Nuvolo, and really excited to have Premera Blue Cross with us today to really share their customer case study around how they ultimately transformed their business around an overall solution to manage their workplace. So quick introductions. My name is Ben Pearson, our Vice President of Global Marketing, and I'm really excited to invite and share our presenters. So Mike Miller, if you don't mind, share a little bit of your background and your role there at Premera.
Thank you. So my background, I served over 2 decades in the Navy, starting off as a logistician for about the first 10 years. As my career progressed in the Navy, I moved on to managing the maintenance and repair of electrical and electronic systems and IT networks, along with the training to use the various systems and networks. After the Navy, for the first 5 years, I worked as a project and program manager, mostly managing sales and IT projects and programs. After I transitioned to facilities in 2017, or back to facilities in 2017, I should say, which is my current position, I manage a portfolio of owned and leased buildings across the Seattle region using a blend of in-house and vendor services.
Fantastic,
This
Mike.
includes the maintenance, janitorial, landscape, safety, security, emergency management, reception, construction, and service intake. And back to you.
That's great, Mike. That's amazing, the scope and scale of what you're doing there. And also thank you for your service. I appreciate that. And next, Mark, I'd like to introduce you in your role there at PK.
Yes, thanks, Ben. Appreciate that. Hi, this is Mark Colosimo with PK Global. A little background on myself: 20 years in the IT space, going all the way back to the days of Siebel and PeopleSoft, to give you a little bit of an idea of my journey. I'm with PK Global. I've been with them for close up to 7 years, and I am aligned with the Nuvolo ServiceNow practice, but also aligned with our healthcare practice. So looking forward to this presentation, and thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you very much, Mark. Just a quick logistics. As we go, if you guys have questions and want to ask myself, Mike, Mark, a question throughout, use the chat feature in the upper right. Feel free to chat in questions. What we'll do at the very end is we'll cover all of the Q&A at the end of the presentation today. With that, let's talk a little bit about our agenda and what we're going to dive into. So first, we're going to dive a little bit into Premera Blue Cross's business and just a little bit of context around what they do, what their business is. Then we're going to go into, and Mike's going to give us an opportunity to hear firsthand really what that transformation looked like. I know that a number of you folks on this call are probably thinking, what's the state that I'm in right now? How am I running my facilities and workplace business? What are some of the opportunities to improve as we look at things like flexible working environments, as we look at maintaining our built environment? What can we do different and better, right? And so Mike's going to share a little bit of their story on the transformation. He's then going to dive into space and real estate planning and looking about, the overall strategy there. Looking at facilities maintenance as well and opportunities to improve efficiencies and hopefully cost advantages there. And dive into some reporting. We'll wrap up at the very end with Q&A. So with that, I'd like to turn it over, Mike, and have you share a little bit about Premera, what the company does, and a little more details on the functions that you're focused on there.
Thanks, Ben. So Premera is the largest health plan in the Pacific Northwest, serving more than 2 million people. We are committed to controlling rising medical costs while ensuring access to quality care for our members. Within facilities, I'm responsible for managing a portfolio of owned and leased buildings across the Seattle region for Premera, using a blend of in-house and vendor services to support those buildings. Ben?
Great. Let's talk a little bit about your transformation, Mike, because like I said, you typically what we've seen from other clients in a similar boat is, facilities, is looking at potentially they have sort of silos that exist within the facilities department. and each of those departments run their own tech and own tools for those various systems. Maybe tell a little bit about sort of what that previous state was and kind of what your goal was as you looked at the future of how you run your business.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. So I'd say probably Premera wasn't any different to a lot of organizations with managing their buildings and their assets. What I'm going to talk about is we had two different problem sets that we were trying to solve for, two different main problem sets that we were trying to solve for. And this started back in 2018. My team began using for the first time a CMMS, and we needed to implement this system rather quickly because of a company priority to support various cybersecurity requirements regarding documenting and reporting our planned and corrective maintenance on assets. And at that time, ServiceNow didn't offer a facilities module that could support these requirements. Let me add that ServiceNow in, I believe it was late 2017, became Premera's system of choice for routing work. But unfortunately, they just didn't have what we needed to do what we needed for the new requirements. So the drawbacks with the new solution that we implemented, the new CMMS system that we implemented, did eventually lead us to decide to partner with somebody else. And this is when we started talking to Nuvolo, and the integration of this solution with ServiceNow was one of the main advantages because it just wasn't possible with our previous solution. And that was one of the main problem sets is we had two systems that we had to use. We had the ServiceNow system, which was the IT system that they implemented. And then we had to turn our work into and put it into this other CMMS system that we were using, which meant that we had two work order functionalities that we had to use in order to maintain our cybersecurity requirements and how work was being routed within Premera. Our second problem set was that at the same time that I was implementing our first CMMS, the spatialization team started using a space management software solution. And this was to manage space assignments as well as move outs and changes. This solution was used to manage workstation locations and move planning. But for requests, they still relied predominantly on email, but did use ServiceNow in some instances. Excel spreadsheets were still used to manage the move process as a whole. In addition, the data between our HR system, Workday, the old space management solution, iOffice, and our access control system, Linnell, had partial manual steps, which resulted in data errors related to employees, where they were sitting or their mail stops, etc. So the opportunity in 2019 is when Premera approached me with Nuvolo, Premera IT specifically, with their enterprise asset management solution that included CMMS and the space management solution. The advantage there was they had a strategic partnership with ServiceNow, which made this a very optimal solution. And additional opportunities that Nuvolo could resolve with this solution was it made it so that Premera could improve the onboarding and offboarding processes of employees and contingent workers. And Nuvolo was able to bring that stable connection between ServiceNow and Nuvolo and Workday. The stabilization has allowed the automation of most of the spatialization onboarding and offboarding tasks. And this automation has created efficiencies that would have just never been realized with previous manual steps. And then finally, what else Nuvolo has done for us is Nuvolo has allowed us to perform a system consolidation, reducing real estate and facilities platforms from 4 to nearly 1 so far. It has also created more efficient processes, eliminated duplicate work, and increased user satisfaction. Adding this platform to ServiceNow has leveraged the existing connections with ServiceNow versus creating new integrations, which Premera IT really enjoyed. The solution also replaced 2 vendor relationships with 1 and benefited Premera IT because they're managing fewer applications now. Ben?
That's quite a story. It really is, Mike. And you think about the fact that your departments that were working in their own world, and like you said, had their own source of truth. They had their spreadsheets, their separate tools, now have one source of truth to collaborate like they hadn't before. It's quite a story and quite a testament to, kind of the vision you're going down, and being able to give all of your departments a system to work out of, to pass work and share data and report. And then you mentioned it, a single employee experience too, to request work or get support from IT or from your facilities departments. It's quite a story. I know you're going to talk a little bit more about kind of your journey and where you're going to go to here in just a second, but really impressive, first steps in this process. Now, when we think about this next piece around space and real estate planning, one of the things we're all seeing as we look at organizations either, reopening their doors, looking at flexible working environments. One of the biggest challenges with flexible working environments and hybrid work environments is, how do I actually manage how many buildings do I need? How much space do I need? How do I measure and actually forecast space demands now and into the future? So let's talk a little bit about that, because you're not unique in that, right? This seems to be a theme that I talk to almost daily right now with clients around how do we manage when it's not a one-to-one person to desk relationship any longer. How are we going to manage that space? Maybe talk a little bit about that.
Hi, Ben. I believe I lost you for a second there. So were you able to get everything from the last slide before I probably dropped for a second?
Sure did. Yeah, your audio came through great on the last slide. Yep.
Awesome. Perfect timing to lose it and then come back in. So you introducing me
Good.
to the next slide. That was good timing. Awesome. So yeah, with space and real estate planning, COVID has really brought some change to how Premera is going to work. Prior to COVID, we were lightly using badge data for headcount and food services. Since COVID, badge data tells us where we are at for occupancy in our buildings, food services again, and building usage. We're also using it for contact tracing as needed. Another change was that we added a worker type called hybrid. This is in addition to our telecommuter and full-time employees that are on site or at home. Other changes included, we will no longer allow contractors to have permanent seats on campus. This means hoteling is becoming more important for our return to work strategy. We're also using a combination of badge data with space data, and we plan to use the reservation data for long-term planning as we move forward. And because of these changes, we've updated our real estate strategy. And before COVID, we were planning for 2,200 on campus, and now we're planning for 1,500 because of all the telecommuter population increased quite a bit over the pandemic, because we discovered that more people could work from home and be productive workers for Premera. Ben?
That's great. And that being able to now be flexible for your employees, while also looking at, overall now being able to plan around your overall building and real estate strategy in the same platform, right? Being able to actually forecast that space and real estate needs now and into the future is a really big deal as you look at the overall cost associated with those buildings, right? So really exciting stuff you've been transitioning into here, Mike. Let's talk a little bit next around maintenance. Obviously, we've talked about a couple areas so far. As you're looking at maintaining your buildings, how's that transformed, and what are the value you're seeing in this solution?
Yeah, thanks, Ben. So Nuvolo, like I said earlier, is our second CMMS. We learned a lot from our first one, and what we learned the most about is that it wasn't a good fit for our company. But what Nuvolo provides as an advantage to Premera is the front end that is already adopted by the company, which is ServiceNow, along with one system that can track our work and create objective data that we can use to prove the value of not only just the Nuvolo system, but also my team. And having that one system so you don't have the swivel chair, which is how I like to call it, when you're taking stuff from one system and then you're physically moving it to another system instead of the IT networks connecting it. That was a huge advantage. And moving forward, we just need to improve the documentation of our work within Nuvolo. That's a Premera thing, and drive adoption further. Some other advantages is the ability to show the total cost of ownership of assets. Seeing where in a building an asset is located because you've got maps that show it. And then barcode scanning has been a very important tool for my maintenance team to just really go in there, scan it, see what's happened, because you can bring up within the system the entire life. As long as you're recording it, you can bring up the entire life. To include, you could bring it up and show who's the vendor that services this piece of equipment. And when was the last time they were here? How much did it cost us? And it's pretty cool that way you can do that. Rounds is another an important tool that we've had and we're really using a lot. An example of rounds that you could do is, as it's listed here, is fire extinguishers. So, our buildings, they have a lot of fire extinguishers in it. And in some systems, if you're going to do a maintenance check, like your monthly or whatever, you're going to have to do a ticket for each fire extinguisher. What Rounds does is it allows you to go and do the entire check, and then you just submit the ticket, and then it updates the rounds for all the fire extinguishers at one time. So it saves a lot of work and streamlines that whole process. And then some of the advantages that we found within Nuvolo that we leveraged was we put our mail services team on that. As you get a package from time to time. Pre-COVID, you usually had to sign for it. So far for me, during COVID, I haven't had to sign for anything, but eventually that's going to come back. In our mail services team, we built out the functionality within Nuvolo so they can track all the packages and record who they've given it to, so that there's documentation that they can go back to and see how that's happened. And then what's coming up next is we haven't incorporated fully janitorial services into the application, but that's to come soon. And back to you, Ben.
It's great. And this last comment around bringing additional departments within your facilities organization, even ancillary departments within your organization into the same system in the same platform to be able to also collaborate. To your point, janitorial services, right? They could also, as they're doing their custodial rounds around the building and cleaning the areas or sanitizing the building, right? They now can all operate in the exact same system. Mike, has the offline mobile also played a role if we think about sort of any connectivity, being able to work in any condition, even in basements or other areas? Has that been a help as well for your business?
Yeah, it's been helpful. So far, we haven't had too many issues with needing to do the offline connectivity, but we do know how to use it, and we can. And it does work well when we need to. But for the most part, what we've done, the one difference that we did as part of this project, everybody on my maintenance team, I issued them out a tablet, an Apple tablet, by the way. I'm not a big Apple fan, so, but we gave them an Apple tablet, and they're doing a lot of their work from their iPad Pros, and it has a data connection or a Wi-Fi connection, and we found those tools to be invaluable for us because it allows us to do the barcode scanning right there, and it has a pretty sizable screen. So no, we haven't used the offline functionality as much, but I know it works well because we have had to use it, and the system works really well on tablets and stuff.
That's great. That's great, Mike. And the reality is your techs now have the ability to work anytime, anywhere And what that ultimately translates back to is you now have real-time data into the maintenance activities going on in your business, right? So when you think about reporting across the business, that gives you those insights, right? As they're out in the field with their iPads, and they're able to get you updates immediately with what's actually going on in the field. That's
And
great.
that's a true statement, because both my team lead and my maintenance, they go around with those iPads, and there's days that they don't even sit at their desk. They're just out there, and they're working in the field, and they can do pretty much anything with Nuvolo right out there, and they never have to come back to their desks unless they want to come back to their desk.
That's fantastic. It's fantastic. The days of printed work orders are hopefully gone. That's
Yep.
excellent. Great. Well, let's talk a little bit about you actually have included a dashboard here, and I know we think about how your teams operate. It's one thing. How you monitor and manage the business is another. Tell us a little bit about this dashboard. And by the way, I believe you set this up, but maybe tell us a little bit more about how you look at your business and how you can run sort of dashboards and reports to look at how the business is running.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Ben. So the biggest thing that I want to call out right from the start is I created this on my own with very little training. And there's only a couple graphics on it. I could have added a lot more if I wanted, but some of the things that I find to my advantage is where is the work, and what types of requests are out there, and how much work is happening, and where it's at in the process. And that's what this dashboard tells me, is where's all that work and how we're doing. I created this dashboard in like 2 hours with very minimal training. That's how simple it is. And it was Nuvolo is the first platform that I've been able to, within one data set, be able to tell how much planned maintenance I'm doing as compared to how much corrective maintenance I'm doing, which that's a really good measure of how well you're performing. And although this one, if you can see it, it says 65% preventive maintenance and 35% corrective maintenance. It's not quite to where we want it, but I finally have a measure that I can start to use to show where we need to try to drive things to improve. And I've never really had that. I never had that with the previous CMMS, and I obviously didn't have that before I had any CMMS. And this is the first system that can do that with just a really quick dashboard to it. And there is a graphics on that one too, but I thought the table was more demonstrative of what I was trying to say, so I made sure that was showing instead of the graphic. And obviously, you've got requests to approve, so that's on there. Changes to approve, that's on there, and it's just a click. This refreshes itself every time you refresh the page. So it's always up to date if you come back to it, and you can see where all your work lies. So I think that's a huge advantage to this application, and really shows the value to me of Nuvolo, that I could actually do that. The one added point that I'd just like to throw in there real quick is the maintenance module that we implemented. It was pretty easy to implement. I've implemented a number of projects our IT projects over my years. And this was really one of the easiest to implement, which I thought was another good advantage of the tool. So it was not only easy to use from creating the dashboard perspective, but that implementation process that we did with PK, it went really well. And that to me was just, sometimes that's just a foreign thing when you implement software, because it can become a lot harder than what you think it should be. So I think that was another advantage too. But anyway, back to you, Ben.
I appreciate that, Mike. I'm glad to hear it was a good experience. And, obviously Mark can talk a little bit more about that here in a second on the implementation side. But your comment about having access to real-time data, I couldn't imagine, one of the common things I see, Mike, is facilities leaders, running their business out of an Excel spreadsheet, right? They're exporting data out of their space system and their real estate system and their maintenance system, and trying to make major business decisions around how the business is running. what you were able to set up here on your own, which is great to see, is you now have real-time access with the real-time data to be able to actually make decisions across your departments. And that's a true testament to the fact that you don't have to export data and operate out of a spreadsheet to make some pretty major decisions in how the business is progressing, right?
Yep.
That's
Yeah, it
great.
works really well for that, and enjoying it so far with how we can use it.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, let's dive in next. Let's talk a little bit about kind of where are you going? What are your next steps? What's your vision, your roadmap on kind of how this expands and grows with the business needs you see, coming in the future?
Yeah, great. So, hoteling. I mentioned this earlier with the pandemic, the need for hoteling has grown. Once we finish our return to campus in the fall, we plan to open up the option to the company where they can hotel. Uh, and so we built out the solution within Nuvolo, so it's ready to go. We are waiting on one integration to happen from their roadmap, which I think is happening very shortly, which is the integration with Outlook. Uh, and once that happens, then we plan to fully implement in the fall when employees return to campus, or have fully returned and we're opening it back up to the rest of the company, the hotel, I should say. Now, adoption, as we move forward, we plan to incorporate more and more of the real estate and facilities team to Nuvolo. And the goal is to get space further involved, or the move ads and change team further involved in the solution, along with janitorial, by hopefully the end of this year. And the janitorial, that the reason why we haven't fully implemented with janitorial is it's not a Nuvolo issue, it's a Premera IT. There's a security limitation with getting them added to the tool, and we're still working that through with our IT department. And then with the growth and emphasis in sustainability and reducing our carbon footprint, we are looking at options to possibly leverage Nuvolo. And what we're kind of waiting on, though, is to see where Nuvolo takes the solution on their roadmap to build out that functionality now by pursuing it and us building it out with Nuvolo. We'd rather wait for that to happen, and then they build it out with what they need. And then we'll help inform them if they need some help from us. We'd be happy to help inform them on what we think is the good requirements for that. And then as a goal for myself and my team this year, we're planning to leverage Nuvolo reporting to show the value of Nuvolo to leaders and the team as a whole in 21. We are hoping that with future releases also within Nuvolo, that the functionality for reporting can be further built out so it's better suited at the executive level. That, I guess, is one drawback is you have good reporting at my level, and what I want to do is get it to better reporting so it can be more at the executive level, which is higher level data, more at a true portfolio level. But we know that's on the roadmap to come, so I'm not too worried about that. But overall, those are our next steps, our vision and our roadmap. Back to you, Ben.
That's great. That's really great, Mike. And the partnership between us and yourself and all of our customers is well aligned in terms of we want to make sure that we align on your roadmap and aligned, like I said, making sure that, for example, we do a quarterly release of our solution. And tomorrow, by the way, is our next release, which does include the Microsoft Outlook integration. So that'll be available as of tomorrow officially, Mike. So one, we're really excited about that partnership, and then making sure that you're aware of it so we can align together on that. And also, one of the things we do look at as well, Mike, is also getting feedback from clients like yourselves on where we go with our product and our overall solutions. And that's a key testament to what we do as a company. And so I'm excited. And like I said, it's a great partnership we have together on this journey and aligning with your business focus in the future.
Yep, I agree. That's another advantage of Nuvolo, from my perspective, is they're very open to hear the feedback and take that constructively into the solution.
I appreciate that, Mike. Appreciate that. Absolutely. So I'll share a slide here, Mike, which kind of ties a little bit of a bow around the story you kind of just told. You know, one of the things that when organizations are looking at their disparate, you know, facilities, workplace solutions, and when you start looking at, well, who on the market can offer a true platform solution, right? Not only can we bring our maintenance teams into the same system as our space and workplace teams, our field service teams, our capital projects and construction and planning, design, and construction groups, real estate groups, and planning, lease renewals or subleasing of corporate office space, to sustainability tracking, to protecting those connected operational technology assets that are on the network, like security cameras and security doors, et cetera. So being able to bring all of this into a single platform as a single solution, so your teams can collaborate and work together, as you just explained very well, like the value there, but also on the same platform as IT and other groups, right? Now you can truly collaborate not only within the facilities and real estate departments, but you can collaborate across to IT and other teams there as well. In the end, what that delivers is both a great experience for your techs and your engineers in the field, but also that employee experience, right? If I work for Premera Blue Cross, I now have a single self-service experience across the business, right? I don't have to go to 10 different places to find, how do I get a standing desk? How do I get my walls painted? How do I request new equipment for my home office? That all can be done in one single enterprise system. That is a true unique value proposition in the market for us. And so really excited and glad to see that, if you look at this wheel, kind of where all the pieces you just talked about today that you're already running and continuing to expand into across your business.
Yep,
Great.
I
I'm
agree.
going to move over now, Mark. Talk a little bit about, your implementation services. Obviously, this was a great implementation. Mike had some nice things to say about just how easy this implementation went. But Mark, maybe share a little bit with the audience on kind of what your services are and how you implement solutions like Nuvolo.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. And thank you everyone for being on this call. We did have the pleasure and the privilege to work with Mike and the Premera team. Great experience, great project. I think one of the most important piece to this, and I'll elaborate this a little bit further on the next slide, is if you are looking at a connected workplace solution, if you do have the time to plan for it, take the advantage of time. I think in this case, this really helped us in accelerating the success of this project. The other thing is we have deep experience and expertise in not only the Nuvolo product, but also the ServiceNow platform. Many years of experience in not only implementing and supporting ServiceNow, but also the experience on Nuvolo services. I think that really helped a lot, just because of what we could anticipate in this implementation, and that really helped in our success. Ben, if you can go to the next slide. And this is the other aspect I think is important, that I think separates PK from a lot of other organizations, is not only do we have the ability, the experience in Nuvolo and ServiceNow, but we also have deep knowledge in healthcare. And I think that's very important. We've lived and breathed healthcare since 2004. We have very good credentials. I'm not going to go through all these, the recognition space, because you'll get a copy of this presentation. But I do want to say that we do have a deep knowledge and experience in experienced platforms, not only like Adobe and Sitecore, but especially in ServiceNow and Nuvolo. And I think that helps us in our ability to execute on quality implementations. The only thing I would also add, Ben, to the audience here today, and this is something that I'd like to offer to everyone. If you are in budget season right now, and if you are looking at a connected workplace solution for your organization, and if this would help, if you would like to talk to us and take a look at what would a typical implementation look like, from a timelines and cost, we'd be more than happy to get on a private conversation with you and put together a budget document to help you in regards to planning. And again, I can't emphasize enough, the planning piece is so important for a quality implementation. And with that, I want to thank everyone. And Ben, I'm going to pass it back over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mark. And you talk about that planning phase of implementations. One of the things that I know Mike did an amazing job of is make sure that going into this implementation, he actually had really good data, right? When we think about the quality of make, model, manufacturer, asset data, right? Floor plan data. The fact that this stuff was already prepared, clean, ready to go made a big difference when we think about how smooth this implementation ran. And Mike, that's a big testament to how you're running your business there. And like I said, it made everyone's life, better in the end. And the fact that we came into a state of really good data to work with as part of that migration process. Great. Well, at this point, what we're going to do, we're going to dive into some Q&A. I've seen a few questions drop in. And the first question, Mike, is for you. And you'd mentioned in this question, you mentioned talking about working with IT, and you'd actually mentioned that IT even came to you kind of trying to look for solutions to help your business. Maybe talk a little bit about that relationship between facilities and IT. And the reason I bring it up is we think about buildings these days, and smart buildings are becoming more and more a theme. And you think about that need to collaborate between facilities departments and IT is becoming more and more critical for organizations that I'm talking to. Maybe talk a little bit about your relationship with IT, Mike, and maybe how you've seen it maybe in the past roles, but also how you're seeing it operate here at Premera.
Yeah, really good question. So the interesting thing about me is before I moved to facilities, I was in Premera IT and their PMO as a project manager. And so when I moved over to facilities, I thought the relationship with IT would be a lot easier. And, that was back in 2017. And what I found out though is there were some big silos between facilities and Premera IT that it was occurring. Outside of their data center team, we had a really good relationship with the data center team because we had to be so symbiotic. But it came to the point where they implemented ServiceNow, and they told us about 3 weeks before they went live with ServiceNow, and they were going to take us out of other functionality. So that right there is one point of contention we had, and it did cause a little bit of more silos and a bigger rift between us and IT. But over time, they realized what they had done, and so they started trying to engage more with us to bring us in. And then I was using some of my partnerships from back in my days when I was in IT, and we started to leverage each other a lot more. And when our relationship really, really started to accelerate and get much more positive was probably when they introduced Nuvolo. And that's when it really started. And then when it took off like a rocket was during COVID. Because COVID, we all realized that we had to partner, they had to partner with us, we had to partner with them. And then the other aspect is we're doing a construction project and remodeling all of our buildings on campus. And they're a major contributor to it because of the technology that we're putting in the buildings. From all the controls we're using is running through the Premera networks. So we have to work with them to get those established. Working with them as partners within the AV and conference room spaces. We've learned over the last probably 18 months to 2 years, both sides have learned how much and how important it is that we've got to have a really good relationship between IT and facilities. And we've established one, and I think it's paying dividends for us. Right before this meeting, I had an issue with IT it quickly got resolved, and they were leveraging me for help on another item, and we're working well together. And when we obviously didn't work well together was when we were all in silos and we wanted to do everything on our own and not take advantage of the others within the other sides of the department. And it's paid dividends over the long run. So I'm rambling, but I think I've answered most of that question, Ben.
I think you absolutely did, Mike. And you actually brought up a good example, and this is where you see that collaboration needed the most, right? You think about a building life cycle, right? That building life cycle, you use the renovations example, but think about net new construction, right? Just think about the interlocks between the departments, not only within facilities, but IT, and being able to execute on a project like that, right? Being able to operate in the same system and collaborate across these groups during a renovation, during construction, during that entire life cycle, that's really a big deal, right? So that's great. I'm glad to hear, Mike, things are in a great state there between the facilities and IT department. Obviously, you, like I said, having a past relationship there certainly might help as well there. Mike, the next question that came in, looks like this one came in from Anne. Talk a little bit about your driving of adoption. So specifically, talk about kind of what did you do to increase the adoption? What have been sort of the challenges, and how are you responding to some of those challenges around adoption of a new solution?
So, so I'll start by saying how the old solution that we had and how that just didn't work, even at however much I tried with adoption. And the old solution, because it wasn't connected to anything else and there was so much manual effort, adoption was hard. It was very difficult to do, and it became evident over time that we either had to make major changes within the solution that we were using to get it adopted, or we had to go to a new solution because there was too much manual processes. One of the easiest things that you can do for adoption is you make it simple and easy, and it's a very stable environment. That's your first step. If you can make it simple and easy and it's a very stable solution, people are going to see that and they're going to leverage it. And so on my team, adoption has went really well because the solution is very simple and easy to use. It's a very stable environment, and we're executing it really well. Further adoption, as the solution becomes more mature with us and it becomes more stable with the space side, we'll get them to adopt more. Right now, we're still getting through the kinks of a new solution with the floor plans in the solution, so we can see locations and do the move adds change process. As that starts to grow, gets more mature, and it's shown that it's a stable and good environment, we'll get them adopted, and we're going to show the value of Nuvolo with the data that we're going to do this year. And that's why it's one of my other reasons why it's a goal on my team, is to show the value of Nuvolo, is because that's going to demonstrate to others what they can do. If I can prove and justify why I have so many guards, why I have so many maintenance techs and stuff, they're going to see it and see, oh, wow, I can justify that too if I just use the solution. That's my biggest thing about adoption is to demonstrate the value.
Completely agree. And that's where those dashboards and executive dashboards you mentioned, where you want to go there with that, being able to validate just all the value your departments are providing back to the business, right? That's great.
Yep.
That's great. And obviously you used the iPad example earlier, Mike, around adoption. It seems like that's been very well adopted in the fact that, even not only just your techs in the field and your supervisors are also leveraging that same tech, and it seems like they adopted it as well. So it's a great story. The next question, and I can answer this one as well. Mike, I don't know if you're using it or not, but the question came from Roxanne around the barcode scanning. And the question is, and I'll answer it from a technical perspective, but is, in addition to barcodes, does the system scan RFID asset tags? The answer is yes. I'll talk more about that answer. But Mike, are you using any other tags like QR codes or 1D or 2D barcodes? What type of barcodes are you using?
So what we'll use is if the asset doesn't have a barcode on it, we'll put one on it. If the asset has a barcode on it, we'll use that barcode. And in some
Great.
cases, I believe they do have the QR codes, but all of that functionality works, and it works really well. It's so much better than our last solution. Oh my gosh, it's so much better.
I'm glad to hear that. And Roxanne, to answer that question, yeah, as Mike said, one, you can leverage all your existing barcodes that you may already have tagged on your assets, and it does support 1D, 2D, and QR codes just with the native barcode camera. It also, if you use third-party RFID scanners, it also supports that as well. So if you're using RFID, we do have clients that are using RFID, especially in healthcare. A lot of clients already have rolled out like a RFID or RTLS tracking system in their hospital. So depending on what specific use case you have, it does support that as well. It supports Bluetooth attached RFID scanners. So if you have that capability, we can leverage that as well as part of the solution. Great. I think that was the last question. If anyone else has any other questions, feel free to drop those in. I'll give everybody 1 or 2 more minutes to drop in a last final question. While we're doing that, I'll just pull up our contact information. If anyone wants to reach out to Mark offered, appreciate that Mark offered to provide anyone estimates if you are looking at a budgetary cycle. This is Mark's contact information, or you can reach out to Nuvolo directly. There's our contact information here as well. Give everybody just 15 more seconds to see if there's any final questions. This recording will be made available afterwards, so feel free to share this with your colleagues. It'll also be available on nuvolo.com very shortly after the event as well. It looks like there's no other questions coming in. I want to just take a minute and thank you, Mike and Mark, for the presentation today and sharing this case study. It's hopefully folks on the call have had a chance to maybe see or hear some of the challenges they might be facing today, and how this potentially, and the solutions you've looked at here, Mike, have solved some big challenges in your business. So thank you both for participating and sharing the story, and thank you all for the attendees for taking the time to listen and hear this customer case study. So if anyone has any questions, again, feel free to reach out. Thank you again for your time today. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll look forward to working with all of you very soon. Thanks, everyone.